I'd like to talk to you today about how research ethics works. There's no agreed definition of research ethics, which is interesting when you think about it because it's something we talk about a lot, think about a lot, people write about it a lot, and we all discuss it as though we agree and understand what it is, and yet research ethics refers to a very diverse collection of theories and practices. One thing that is key is context, the context of what you're doing. This applies to ethics more generally. If you think about it, it's very unethical to poke a knife in someone, unless you're a surgeon in an operating theatre, in which case it might be highly ethical. You might be saving their life. So the context is very important. And also, it's important to be aware, I think, that research ethics does not exist in isolation. It's often written about, talked about as though it's somehow in a bubble separate from the rest of the world. But I think research ethics is closely linked with political ethics, institutional ethics, social ethics, individual ethics, professional ethics, probably a whole bunch of others. So that makes the whole thing rather more complicated. Let's look at how it works in practice for us as researchers. There's a system of ethical governance that exists, implemented primarily by universities and by health authorities in the Euro-Western world. And this is a regulatory system. It's quasi-enforcement, if you like. It's really there to protect institutions against risk rather than to make research more ethical. And it's implemented through a series of committees. We call them research ethics committees in the UK. They're known as institutional review boards in the US, probably by other names elsewhere. And they implement this system of ethical governance by receiving applications from researchers about whether they can, whether their project is deemed to be ethical or not by the committee. And the idea here is to protect research participants, in theory, overtly, ostensibly. That is the idea. But in fact, it's still all about protecting institutions because it's about setting up systems so that participants are very unlikely to sue the institution for malpractice or poor behaviour. This means that research ethics committees are not very interested in most aspects of research. They tend, on the whole, to focus on data gathering, data storage. A few are now considering researcher well-being as well as participant well-being, but very few ask any other questions. And that seems odd to me because I think ethics is important at all stages of the research process. So overall, it seems to me that this system of ethical governance is not in itself particularly ethical, and it doesn't necessarily make research more ethical, although it is fair to say that some committees are trying really hard to do that, but others are much more rubber stamping machines or working through precedent rather than considering what's in front of them. And also, the system isn't accessible to all researchers. You have to be in a university or affiliated or working for a health authority to have access to the ethical governance system, to the review committees. And although it's quasi-enforcement, the committees don't have any real power. There are many abuses, like, for example, some researchers who go for ethical review in Euro-Western countries and don't receive ethical approval for the research that they want to conduct, will take that research to a country that doesn't have a system of ethical governance and do it there instead. This is known as ethics dumping and is generally held to be highly unethical, but it still goes on. And it goes on within the Euro-Western countries too, in a sense, in that, for example, a researcher who doesn't receive ethical approval for a project might spin it to become not a research project, but maybe an arts project or a consultation. So it's not really research, but they're still doing the work that they want to do. So that also, I think, is deeply unethical. The good news is that there are some changes happening in the world. For example, there is at least one independent research ethics committee. It's known as the New Zealand Ethics Committee. You can look it up online. It has an informative website. It was set up in about, I think, 2014 by some academics, some practitioners, all working as volunteers. And it was for community-based researchers to have access to an ethics committee to review how ethical their research would be. And this committee really tried to be ethical, really tried to look at the research from start to finish, even asking of the research question, is this an ethical question to be doing research around? Another move is that some communities are determining their own ethics and having their own ethical regulatory processes. And these include geographical communities, such as the San people of Southern Africa who live in Botswana and South Africa. Again, you can look this up online on YouTube. If you look up the San Code of Ethics, you can see a short video about this code and how it came to be and how it was launched and what it does. And essentially, these are people who have been very badly treated by researchers, just coming in and taking their knowledge and disappearing and making big profits with it and not sharing any of that profit, whether it's a profit of knowledge or a profit of money, not sharing any of that with the people whose knowledge enabled that profit to be generated in the first place. And then there are other communities like organisations. I've been working with a third sector organisation, a charity, which looks after people who have bloodborne viruses and similar difficulties. Some are drug users, some are from particular ethnic backgrounds. Often, for whatever reason, these service users are quite marginalised. And this charity gets a lot of requests from researchers to come and do research with their service users. And they decided to set up their own ethics committee, essentially to ensure that the service users would benefit, that the research that was being done was fully ethical as they understand it. And that's been a very interesting process. Overall, also, there seems to be a move away from this sort of quasi-enforcement regulatory approach and towards the need to educate researchers, for us to educate ourselves and for universities and organisations where researchers work to educate researchers in thinking and acting ethically throughout the research process, rather than this system of getting ethical approval that can make researchers feel as if they've done ethics. They don't have to think about ethics anymore at all. That's not ethical either. So the move towards education is a real plus. And there's also a move towards global values. An EU-funded project called the Trust Project, which was run from the University of Central Lancashire, worked around the world to find out what people's values were that mattered around these topics. And again and again and again, they came up with the same 4 values: fairness, respect, care, and honesty. And more research ethics principles are being built now on those values, which seem fairly universal or at least very widespread. And this seems a really positive move. I'd like to see research ethics become more ethical. And indeed, guess what? I've written a book about this. If you haven't seen it, you might find it useful. I'm told it's readable and helpful. Thank you.